Good afternoon. This is Philip Koerper. This is the Philip Koerper Show. Get my microphone plugged in here. It's kind of a low budget operation here. This is episode 94, April 3rd. There's a lot of stuff to cover. I'm trying to figure out what I want to cover first. And this, I think, is my favorite. So there was a Supreme Court ruling, and Neil Gorsuch wrote the majority opinion. And I want to describe one of the leftist places to read about this. And this is from Esquire magazine. And it's entitled, "The Supreme Court Just Went Medieval on Executions and the Eighth Amendment." And this is written by Charles P. Pierce, April 2nd. This is really fascinating. So it talks out about, basically the Eighth Amendment talks about cruel and unusual punishment. So the founding fathers, they did not want, they were, a lot of severe torture kind of things. The English law at that time did allow for a lot of dismembering people, dissecting them alive, burning people alive when they were convicted of serious crimes. George Washington was had a very disciplined army, and he was quick to hang deserters. Even in New York, when he paraded in New York and the British had just left, he immediately had the gallows for some deserters or people to be punished. I forgot exactly what those soldiers were guilty of. And so lots of discipline. I really love the PragerU video about the death penalty. Dennis Prager gives a really nice synopsis of what we should do with the death penalty. He talks about that horrendous killing of that family. There was a doctor and his wife and two daughters. And these two guys broke into their house. They beat the dad, the doctor guy, with like a baseball bat, like his bat. And he was threw him into the basement or a crawl space. I can't remember where he was, or in the basement. And he was unconscious down there. Then they went up and raped his wife and sexually assaulted his daughter, like 11-year-old daughter. Then they killed his wife, and then they set his daughters, bound them in a bed and set the bed on fire and burned them alive. The father woke up from being beaten and ran next door and got help, but it was too late. His wife and his daughters were killed by these two men, and they were caught. And so basically Dennis Prager makes the argument, should they be put to death? And Dennis Prager makes the point that, morally, or just of course, what kind of punishment? If we gave them a soft punishment, what does that symbolize? The worth of those three people's lives. It's very persuasive. And so anyhow, the court ruled that on cruel and unusual punishment. And this article is really hilarious because first off, it talks about these inmates and that they were being disciplined and they were chained to a post in a hot day. They were offered bathroom breaks every 15 minutes and offered drinking water. And then John Paul Stevens ruled that this was cruel and unusual punishment. He said this punitive treatment amounts to gratuitous infliction of wanton and unnecessary pain that our president clearly prohibits. So the case they ruled on is this guy who, let's see here. So they ruled on this guy's, his name is Russell Bucklew, and he's on death row in Missouri. And so he's scheduled to die by lethal injection for a murder, rape, and assault spree in 1996. Okay, so this article just glosses right over that. It glosses right over what Bucklew did. uh, and which is just really, really frustrating. And actually, I was going to look up what he is actually convicted of doing here. This is just really, because, the libtards will not talk about what this guy did. They will not discuss this. Let's see if I can figure out. See, my Google search gives me all these liberal articles here. And so it's going to be hard for me right off the bat to figure out exactly what this guy did. I'm looking at the CBS News article about what he did. So anyhow, this is a ruling about that he's got these tumors. Okay, this is really weird. So this went to the Supreme Court because his lawyers, Buckley's argument was that subjecting him to lethal injection could cause a tumor in his throat to burst and make him choke on his own blood. Anyhow, so I can't find immediately here. Of course, here we go. Buckley was on death row for the 1996 murder of Michael Sanders, who was living with Buckley's former girlfriend. After entering a trailer where the two were living with their children, Buckley fatally shot Sanders and later raped his former girlfriend. Buckley was arrested by a car chase and shootout with police. Okay, so they're making the argument here that this lethal injection is against the Eighth Amendment, that this is cruel and unusual punishment. Now, these kind of cases frustrate me more than anything because I am an anesthesiologist. And so I give these drugs, we give these drugs all day long to patients to put them to sleep. We put people to sleep who have tumors. We put people to sleep who have tumors in their throats, who have these. This guy had vascular tumors in his head, neck, and throat. So we put people to sleep all the times with abscesses, tonsillar abscesses, people who have their tonsils taken out and they're bleeding, and we put them to sleep. We do this all the time. This kind of argument is so non-medical. I mean, this is just so frustrating. This is incredible to argue that he might choke. The thing is that even if this did burst when you give these drugs, so normally there's a cocktail of 3 different types of drugs that you give with lethal injection. And you know what? The first 2 are what we use every day in the operating room to put patients to sleep. We give them the drug to put them to sleep, and then we give them a drug usually to paralyze them so we can make it easier to put the breathing tube in and for the surgeons to work on a patient, to relax their muscles, to actually paralyze their muscles. And so the third drug that they give is potassium, usually, historically, and that stops the heart. So normally with the first 2 drugs, if you don't do any artificial breathing for a patient, they will die of hypoxia, die of lack of oxygen. So anyhow, this argument, so we could put Buckley to sleep, okay, and so maybe he coughs and he does rupture one of these vascular tumors. Well, he's already fallen asleep, and he might cough a little bit, but the chances are he won't remember any of this. Okay, and so even if he did, it would be just a brief moment there. And so anyhow, this has got to be one of the most humane ways to kill somebody, because if you've ever been put to sleep, this is basically with an IV, this is the same way we put everyone to sleep, and no one wakes up and has sued me for cruel and unusual punishment by putting them to sleep this way. This is so ridiculous, these arguments against lethal injection. It's obvious these people just hate the death penalty and they will do anything. They don't care how wicked, evil the person is. They are against the death penalty. I think they're really morally wrong on that. And as a people, we have to have punishments. We have to have justice. We have to have the value of life. And so Neil Gorsuch wrote in reviewing this case, the Constitution allows capital punishment. In fact, death was the standard penalty for all serious crimes. At the time of the founding, nor did the later edition of the Eighth Amendment outlaw the practice. On the contrary, the Fifth Amendment, added to the Constitution at the same time as the Eighth, expressly contemplates that a defendant may be tried for a capital crime and deprived of life as a penalty, so long as proper procedures are followed. Okay, I'm reading on what Neil Gorsuch wrote. While the Eighth Amendment doesn't forbid capital punishment, it does speak to how states may carry out that punishment, prohibiting methods that are cruel and unusual. What does this term mean? At the time of the framing, English law still formally tolerated certain punishments even though they had largely fallen into disuse. Punishments in which, quote, terror, pain, or disgrace were superadded, unquote, to the penalty of death. And then he quotes, that's from Blackstone, English Law, 1769. These included such, quote, disgusting in quotes, practices as dragging the prisoners to the place of execution, disemboweling, quartering, public dissection, and burning alive, all which Blackstone observed savored of torture or cruelty. Gorsuch goes on, what does all this tell us about how the Eighth Amendment applies to methods of execution? For one thing, it tells us that the Eighth Amendment does not guarantee a prisoner a painless death, something that, of course, isn't guaranteed to many people, including most victims of capital crimes. Instead, what unites the punishments the Eighth Amendment was understood to forbid and distinguishes them from those it was understood to allow is that the former were long disused, unusual forms of punishment that intensified the sentence of death with a cruel superaddition of terror, pain, or disgrace. Okay, so this article goes on and says this is originalism turned barbarism. Oh, God. Oh, we're going to get all worked up on feelings now. So it is ironic that most of these people kill people, okay. Recently, I read up, I talked to my podcast about Zoe Hardin, and she was killed in Dallas. And she was like 18 years old. She was abducted while she was turning in a Redbox video. And this guy raped her and brutally killed her, like with a knife. Okay, wow. I wonder if she suffered any pain. Oh, I mean, it's really even creepy to talk about that. But just think about these murderers and what they do to people and how they torture them and kill them. That man raped her and then killed her. Okay, so anyhow, I am very supportive of the capital punishment. I'm glad Neil Gorsuch is, and I am very glad that Brett Kavanaugh voted along with Neil Gorsuch on this. And of course, the leftist judges all vote no. They don't want any capital punishment. They're not gonna. Justice is they just don't care. Okay, they're just not going to convict. And you think about the times that we might convict and kill somebody who was innocent. I mean, that's always a possibility. But with DNA evidence, I think things like this are really very extremely rare, as they should be. But no system is going to be a perfect system. But I really am so glad that Gorsuch ruled this. Yeah, this article goes on to criticize Neil Gorsuch. And they talk about the thing that they gave Neil Gorsuch a hard time when he was confirmed to the Senate. And this was this truck driver. And, the truck driver, he broke down and it was cold. And he left his vehicle, but he's supposed to stay with the vehicle. And he left his vehicle. And so the trucking company fired him. That was the law. Okay? That was legal under the law. And Neil Gorsuch, he supported that. He goes, yeah, this is the law. And so, that's the way it goes. Gorsuch said, I said it was an unkind decision. I said it might have been wrong decision, a bad decision, but my job isn't to write the law, Senator. It's to apply the law. If Congress passes a law saying the trucker in those circumstances, gets to choose how to operate his vehicle, I'll be the first in line to enforce it. That's right. So the truck driver needs to operate the vehicle according to the company who owns the vehicle. If he doesn't operate the vehicle as they want, he can be fired. And then Al Franken went on a soliloquy that says he gets fired and the rest of the judges all go, that's ridiculous. You can't fire a guy for doing that. Okay, no rule of law here. Okay, the left doesn't care about rule of law. They just care about feelings. I'm going to talk about that in the very next piece that I'm going to talk about as far as Mueller's report. So excited that Justice Thomas had decided on this before. So there's nothing in the Constitution that says that someone being with a capital crime being put to death, it's got to be absolutely painless. Okay, so I think lethal injection is one of the most, one of the most humane things to do is. And when we put patients to sleep, they still could be moving a little bit, and this just horrifies people. But you can move while you're asleep. Okay, so anyhow, just absolutely, just totally amazing. And it's just amazing how the left will cover these stories. Why should Neil Gorsuch care if someone's essentially tortured to death? He'll never know that guy. So this is such fake news. Lethal injection for a guy with vascular tumors on his head or even in his throat or airway is no big deal. We put patients to sleep like that all the time. Lethal injection is putting someone to sleep, giving a muscle relaxant so they don't move because the observers don't like any kind of movement like that. And then they can give them potassium, which causes the heart to stop. Okay, wow. I mean, very simple. It's going to work every time. If that IV is working, this thing will work every time. So anyhow, really frustrating. I like how Utah went back to like the firing squads. So anyhow, the left is really fighting capital punishment, and they'll stop at nothing. So we're just going to have to just kind of keep fighting back. So I wanted to cover the story of what Alan Dershowitz is saying about the Mueller report. And I've mentioned this earlier, okay? So I like this Fox News article. AG Barr not legally required to release full Mueller report. Alan Dershowitz tells Sean Hannity. And this is so true. We all know this, and I read exactly what the statute says, that this report is confidentially given to the AG. The Attorney General does not have to reveal anything. I know Donald is trying to be very transparent here and trying to reveal as much as possible. Barr is trying to reveal to the American public as much as possible. I know Mueller's redacting things. It is against the law. It is a crime to reveal the information that a grand jury collects. I mean, this is just law. This is just never happens. What about? And I love how Alan Dershowitz talks about the shoe being on the other foot. He says, there's nothing in the regulations that require to reveal anything. And the best test is the shoe on the other foot test. When we go back to James Comey's statement, if Comey had said, we're not going to indict Hillary Clinton on the emails, and the Republicans said, wait a minute, we heard you have a report that said she was extremely careless. We want you to release that. The Democrats would have jumped up and down and said, no, no, no. Prosecutors don't say anything negative about people they haven't indicted. All they're supposed to do is announce no indictment. James Comey was just so out of his league here because he was the head of the FBI. And yes, he is a lawyer, but he is not supposed to act like a lawyer. The FBI is supposed to do investigations, okay? And they're supposed to investigate things. Then they give the information like to the Attorney General, and then they prosecute. Okay, so I'm not a lawyer. I don't have this, I'm not 100% sure on things, but I do know that the FBI obviously is the Federal Bureau of Investigations. Okay. Now the thing here is that Robert Mueller was acting with this special counsel. He is a prosecutor. So he is going to bring charges or indictments up or not. It's indict. We're gonna go to trial. We're gonna accuse somebody of a crime, and we'll let the court system work that out, or we're not going to choose someone to do a crime. So when James Comey said that HRC and her emails, we're not going to indict her, there's nothing criminal going on here. Okay, nothing criminal. So there were no charges against Hillary Clinton. And then if the Republicans said, oh, well, wait, well, we want to see all that stuff you got on here. We want to see it. We want to see the servers. We want to see the emails. Oh, are you kidding me? Comey didn't give us any of that stuff. Okay? It's almost like opposition research on her. Well, the same thing with Donald. Okay? Mueller has been digging around into everything of Donald and the administration. I mean, it's incredible. 500 interviews, 500 people interviewed. It's incredible. $35 million spent on this. And so to release all this information with the grant, this is confidential information. If there's not enough evidence to indict, you don't get to just release all the dirt that the government has just done to research you. This happened. The reason why this is out there is from when they went after Bill Clinton on the Monica Lewinsky thing and the special probe that Ken Starr did. This just turned into opposition research against Bill Clinton. Okay, people knew that was wrong. So anyhow, this is really a joke. And for Nadler to say that he really wants to see all this stuff, who knows, some judge might just release this stuff. But hopefully our laws will be followed here. We are a nation of laws. Okay, so the special counsel, the law is that this stuff is confidential. Now, if Donald wants to reveal certain things, I guess he can choose to do that, but he doesn't have to. I hope he doesn't. It's just a never-ending story. These Democrats never give up. My Democrat friends do admit that they're going to just keep hammering Donald on everything. They're just never going to give up. They're just whatever it takes to wound him, to disenfranchise his victory, everything but the ballot box. They can impeach him, okay? If they think Donald is so bad, impeach him. Otherwise, I'm sorry, you pretty much have to leave the president alone. He's got to be able to do his job. So this is really funny. This Fox News article, Lindsey Graham's going after James Comey. Comey will get to testify in the light of day. I love this. Okay, we want to know what happened here. Okay, so this Robert Mueller, there's no indictments on this Russian collusion thing. We've been hearing this Russia thing forever, and it turns out that after this huge investigation led by a bunch of Democrats, that there is no evidence of Russian collusion. Okay, no crime committed. So anyhow, the president is exonerated in a sense that there's no evidence to indict him. So it's great. We want to know how this got going with James Comey. We actually know how this all got going, but we want to air it in front of the public and be 100% sure, because we've got our guesses. We've got all these leaks. We have all this information, how James Comey went with the Michael Steele dossier to Donald Trump, shared the salacious parts of it, all organized by John Brennan, and how Donald said this is retarded, of course, this is so stupid, and then they leaked it to the media. So the media, that's how this whole thing got started. So we learned about the golden showers and all of this made up Russian hoax stuff. So anyhow, this will be fun to see what happens and to see these Democrats going after this. This is a Fox News article about Biden. So he's been accused by 2 more women of inappropriate touching. So, I mean, this is really, really pretty sad. But, this is the Democrat standard. Let's hold them to it. All women are right. Every accusation is right by a woman. Okay, this is what they said when they were going after Brett Kavanaugh. So Bernard Sanders has been defending Biden and said, oh, just one incident. I can't see that, making him, disqualifying him from being president. Oh, well, now we've got 4. Now we've got 4 women. And these women are probably all, this is all very politically, this is a political hatchet job. I think it's disgusting. But, the Democrats are really into this stuff. Believe all women. #MeToo. So, this is some of their own medicine. It's just actually fun to watch them just destroy themselves, okay, with these kind of ridiculous standards that, believe all women. Where is Blasey Ford, by the way? Whatever happened to her? Wow. I guess, what kind of credibility did her accusations have? I know they've tried. I know she's made, probably close to $1 million off the thing. They said that she had no reason of doing this, except, wow. And she made a lot of money, fortune, and fame. Another article on Fox, Trump stands by the border closure threat as aides say all options being explored. Donald Trump is threatening to close the southern border. Just think about what's going on here. Donald Trump, this is the art of the deal. I love it how he kind of lets everyone know that, he's a little bit unsettled and he's very unpredictable and you never know what he's going to do. Okay, I love it. So he says is going to close the border. Fox News is going berserk. Oh, we're going to be out of avocados in 3 weeks. Oh, yeah, this magic food, this superfood, the avocado, all of this fake news about avocados. But a lot of fancy people think when they eat avocados, this is just a superfood and they're going to live to be 300 years old. So anyhow, we're going to run out of avocados because, well, it looks like most avocados come from Mexico. How many people in America, Americans are so smart. How many farmers in the southern parts of the United States, in California, Arizona, Texas, how many are going to start planting and growing avocados? I bet you there's not a few of them who are going to be working on growing avocados. Also, the parts supplied from Mexico for our cars. I know some of the parts. I have a Honda CR-V, and I think it was actually built in Canada, but it's got the engine was built in America, and I think the transmission was too. I remember when I had a Volkswagen GTI, how it was assembled in Puebla, Mexico, with some parts from Mexico. So I know General Motors gets a lot of parts in Mexico. Wow. So these companies that build things here in the United States and they're getting parts down from Mexico, and then with the threat of this border being closed, how likely are they to continue to invest a lot of money into having their parts built down there? I think they're going to reconsider this. I think they really will. So anyhow, Donald is so smart. And now apparently Mexico is starting to shape up, and they're saying that they're going to really try harder to prevent all of these migrants from reaching our southern border and all these people coming in. This is just a really bad situation. I know Kristen Nielsen, head of the Department of Homeland Security, she is saying now that this is a Cat 5 hurricane disaster. Jay Johnson from the Obama's DHS, a lot of these Border Patrol leaders, these people are just in the state government. They have not switched. They're Obama people too. And they are saying there is a huge crisis at the border. The Democrats just look the other way. And I really feel, I've heard my friends talk about this, and I really think it's true. The Democrats want to avoid talking about the border totally. They don't want to bring this up at all. So they're just going after Trump. They want to see the full Mueller report. It's just pure distraction, complete distraction. So I really like how Donald's trying so hard, to be tough on crime here, and also to protect the border. So anyhow, I listened to a Fox podcast this morning on a run about Howard Schultz was talking. So Howard Schultz is the former CEO of Starbucks, and he's a billionaire, and he is thinking about running for president as an independent. And he talks about how, the parties can't get along, they can't get anything done, and then he's going to come in, and he's really smart, and he's going to kind of triangulate himself. You think about this. Let's suppose Howard Schultz did get elected president of the United States. How is he going to govern? What party is he going to use? The Democrats or the Republicans? Donald Trump even actually had this problem when he became president, is because the Republicans didn't really like him so much, and neither did the Democrats. He used to be a Democrat. And so he had to build a coalition, and he actually really courted the Republicans and courted them, and that's how he's gotten things done with the coalition and getting Democrat support. And so Howard Schultz, being an independent, if he can't get Republican and Democrat support, or Democrat support a coalition, he is not going to be able to pass anything. Okay, so anyhow, we're really a two-party town. So Howard Schultz, being an independent, he might steal votes from the Republicans or the Democrats, and he might affect the election like Ross did. What was his first name? I'm blanking on Ross's first name, but that crazy Texan guy, Ross Perot, that was his name. Ross Perot, how he affected the election and actually kind of gave the presidency to Bill Clinton. So anyhow, Howard Schultz, being an independent, is kind of a joke. It's a two-party town. He's going to not be able to do anything. I had a friend tell me, and change the subject, about her daughter needs some specialty care in Connecticut, and they can't even get into the specialists. They were in at the office of the specialist, and there's so many people in there who only speak Spanish that they can't get their daughter into the specialist. It is really amazing. I love immigration in this country, but really, there is going to be pluses and minuses in immigration. I think we really need to look at that closer. I did mention that about 2/3 of the babies born in LA are to illegal aliens. So, it's incredible, our immigration and the change in dynamics. I really agree with Dennis Prager about immigration. We really don't care where people come from, the color of their skin, the languages they speak, but they need to adopt American values. They need to speak English, adopt American values. That's what makes us a country. Okay, and that's what keeps us a country. Otherwise, everything will fall apart. Speaking of that, this is just a hilarious PragerU video done by Ami Horowitz. This guy's great. And so anyhow, he went on to college campuses and asked all these people, do you think that we should have, like black dorms or black gyms, and that we should have segregated dormitories, segregated gyms, safe spaces for for minorities? And all these students go, yeah, that's a really great idea. Yeah, I think we should have these black dorms and black safe spaces and black gyms. And so then Ami goes out onto the street and interviews blacks out there. And they're like, no, that's like Jim Crow South. That's like racist. No, I think that's a terrible idea. Why wouldn't we want to go back to that. And so, and then Ami goes to this KKK member out like in North or South Carolina. This guy's been arrested for stabbing this other guy because they were arguing over who was the most racist person, who was the most white supremacist person. And this guy, he was asked, yeah, do you think that blacks should be segregated on college campuses and have their own dormitories, safe spaces, or gyms and all this? And this guy's like, oh, yeah, I think that would be great. Yeah, that'd be good. So the white supremacist thinks it's a great idea. The leftist students think it's a great idea. And yet the minority people out on the streets think this is a stupid idea. This is ridiculous. So, it's just so ironic. So ironic. And then these kids on college campus were asked about Brown versus education. They're clueless. They have no idea. They're being spoon-fed this stuff on college campus. There's a lot of pressure to have all this diversity and then to have all these safe spaces for blacks or other unrepresented minorities, as they like to be called. Some people call them. So this is just a crazy. There's a article, a really good article by Richard Vedder in Forbes, Racial Segregation on American Campuses. I mean, this is a big new deal. The one reason why this is doing this, like University of Michigan, they have like 81 diversity people in their little diversity studies group. And where these people just go around campus and just make sure that we're going to talk about race. We're going to talk about how these underrepresented minorities, these black and Hispanic people, are being discriminated upon. And so they've got to have something to do. So they go around lecturing people. Some of my friends at these college campuses get lectured to, and they say you're inherently a racist. There's nothing you can do about it. Racism exists. So we got to do all these special things to help out these minority people. It's really sad. So sad. And most Americans hate all this nonsense. We are really America is one of the least racist countries ever. And anyone can succeed in this country if they really try. So anyhow, that's such a joke. All of this identity politics is just terrible. Another funny video by Campus Reform. It's entitled "Students Support Socialism Until It's Applied to Their GPA." This is hilarious. So they interview these students and they go, "Oh yeah, do you like capitalism or socialism?" And they go, "Oh, I like socialism. Oh yeah, it's more fair. Everyone has education. Everyone has food. Everyone has health care. This is just really awesome. It's just really fair." And then this guy, they ask these kids, what if we could apply, you could give them your good grades to these people. If you could take your good GPA and then you could share your good GPA with these kids. So, your GPA would go down a little bit, but these guys, their GPA would go up. I mean, doesn't that sound fair that you could share your GPA with the kids who are not doing so well, whose GPA is really low? And then these kids go, no, why would I do that? I've worked really hard for my GPA. I'm not going to share that with these other people. They're probably just not even studying. That's what they said. And then the guy interviewing him goes, well, that doesn't sound very fair. I mean, that's what socialism is. You got to give them your money. Oh, these kids, they're just so dumb, and they're just so naive. Of course, they haven't gone out and worked for their money. They don't know what it's like when the government takes about half your money away from you. No, they don't know what that's like, but socialism kind of sounds good. It sounds good to everyone. Everyone has a house, and it has a car, and everyone has health care, and everyone has food. It sounds really good until you run out of money. People don't work when you have socialism. I met someone today, and they're like saying, well, I'm disabled, and it's like, sometimes I'm really shocked by the people who are disabled. They don't look very disabled. They seem really smart and active, but they're disabled. Boy, we got some issues in this country. Oh, speaking of issues with countries, this is a fascinating article that a friend sent me. It's entitled Vox, Vox, Vox Borders. So it's from Vox, like the website. Okay, and it's going to be leftist, okay, right? Vox is leftist, but it's fascinating. This is entitled "Inside North Korea's Bubble in Japan." So what happened is that the Japanese, they invade Korea, and then they grab a bunch of Koreans and they drag them back to Japan. Some as comfort, like for prostitutes for the Japanese soldiers, and as workers. And then what happened is that when the Japanese were done attacking Korea, then Korea, after the Korean War, you've got the southern part of Korea, which is backed by the United States. You've got the northern part of Korea, which is backed by the Russia, Soviet Union. And so then you've got these pockets of Koreans inside Japan. And so these people, a lot of these Koreans went back to South Korea, but these Koreans stayed in Japan. And then North Korea liked having those Koreans there and gave them a bunch of money. Okay, and so these North Koreans that were totally indoctrinated with the North Korean stuff, okay, all the communism and the way they dress and everything. And so they had these schools and these enclaves of just North Koreans in Japan, and North Korea was giving them and funding all of this money. Well, what happened is after when North Korea, like in 2006, started building nuclear warheads and missiles and stuff, this funding is all dried up. Okay, so and then Japan is then when North Korea is lobbying these missiles over Japan. So these Japanese people don't like North Koreans, okay, because North Korea, I mean, Kim has been threatening Japan, lobbing missiles over them. I mean, this is so the Japanese people hate the North Koreans because North Korea keeps threatening to blow them up. And so now you've got these North Koreans in Japan in these itty bitty little communities, and the funding is kind of dried up. And so these kids move around and they have kind of guards to watch the kids so they don't see the Japanese people, beating them up. But anyhow, they were so critical of Japan's, in this video, they were very critical of Japan's nationalism. And then you got the North Korean people in Japan blaming America, and it's like, hey, you guys have all these human rights problems. Don't look at North Korea. So even the United Nations is saying the human rights abuses in North Korea is just beyond pale. I mean, it's just unbelievably awful. Look at the satellite images of North Korea at night. There's hardly any light at all. I mean, this is just they put the place back to the Stone Ages. Look at South Korea. I mean, amazing, unbelievable success there with capitalism. So anyhow, this video is fascinating. And it's interesting to note how they criticize Japan for its nationalism. And that's one reason why they just don't like these North Korean people in Japan. I mean, amazingly. I mean, it's like this one guy who's against these North Koreans said, it's like you have the Osama bin Laden school in America and people were supporting that. How would we feel? We would not like that at all. So once again, this video is a slight at Donald Trump's nationalism, where we're proud to be Americans and that we'll defend our country and that we'll defend our values. And we're not afraid to say how great America is. The left is always putting America down. It is just disgusting. So my last story I wanted to cover before closing with a scripture is FlightAware. I had a friend send me this. Comrade Cortez is threatening to close down airports and airplanes. And if you ever look at FlightAware, which has a picture of like the world and all the airplanes where they are, it's just unbelievable. I don't have the image right in front of me, but it's just unbelievable. And where all these planes are everywhere. It's incredible the economy that we have. And I wanted to close and getting rid of the airplanes. I mean, how ridiculous is that? She's a joke. I read an article yesterday about, she's that young bartender girl. I mean, that's all she is a bartender. I wanted to close with this scripture from Philippians 4:6. It's great. Be careful of nothing, or like be anxious of nothing is how it is said in the New American Standard Bible. But in everything, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known unto God. I love that, being thankful. I think God-feeling people, we feel so very thankful for this beautiful earth, for our wonderful country. And if you live in the United States, or if you wherever you live, I think you should really try to love your country. And if you don't love your country, work on, trying to make it better and get involved in politics and try to make your country better. I love how the people who are thankful and who are grateful are truly happy. So grateful that you guys listened to a long podcast. Thanks for hanging in there. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. This is Philip Koerper. This is the Philip Koerper Show. You can subscribe on iTunes or watch. I'm trying to get on TuneIn. Still not quite there yet. But you could watch on YouTube if you do not have iTunes. You guys have a great day. Thank you.